Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating ancient text, Surah 7, also known as Al-A'raaf. But listen, we aren't just looking at this as some dry piece of history. Not at all. This text actually serves as a profound, incredibly detailed diagnostic map. It charts human psychology, the exact mechanics of the choices we make, and even the mathematical rise and fall of entire societies.
We have to start with a paradox that the text presents, and it's honestly terrifying. What does it mean to have perfectly good eyes, but be completely blind? We're talking about a psychological state of functional blindness. This is a state where we physically possess all our sensory faculties. We see, we hear, but we totally fail to perceive reality. How does a person even get to that point? And more importantly, how do we cure it?
Well, to navigate this journey from that kind of mental constriction to clear sight, we're going to break down the text through these 6 critical themes. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the heights of discernment.
So the title of the text itself, Al-A'raaf, comes from an Arabic root that literally translates to knowing, recognizing, or discerning clearly. It refers to this elevated state of perception. It's essentially an invitation to step completely out of our everyday social pressures, climb up to a higher mental vantage point, and clearly discern actual truth from absolute delusion. Moving right along to Section 2, the origin of conflict.
Now, the text traces the root of our human struggle all the way back to the dawn of consciousness, with the story of Adam and the adversary Iblis. But here's what's fascinating. This isn't framed as your standard fall from grace story. Instead, it's a deep dive into human vulnerability. The text describes how the adversary uses arrogance, or kibber, to refuse acknowledging Adam, and then pivots to using false promises of eternity and power to deceive him. It shows us that our greatest historical weakness is this inherent tendency to just chase false promises. It exposes how incredibly vulnerable we are when we let our ego make us forget our dependencies.
And this sets up a brilliant contrast regarding how we actually protect ourselves. Physical clothing is great, right? It covers our physical vulnerability, it acts as adornment, but the text introduces a second, much more important layer, libas at-taqwa. This translates to the garment of conscious awareness. This psychological clothing is presented as the ultimate goal because it's literally the only true shield against the vulnerability of our own ego and external deception. Okay, let's step back and look at the macro level in Section 3, the repeating historical pattern. So, how does this internal psychological struggle play out across civilizations? Well, the text lays out a striking 5-part formula for societal collapse. It's like clockwork. First, a messenger emerges from within a community. Second, a very clear warning of justice is delivered. Third, and this is the real kicker, the elite class, known as al-Mala, actively mocks and rejects the message simply to protect their social status. Fourth, a logical consequence, basically a collapse, arrives. And fifth, only those who maintained conscious awareness survive. The takeaway? Societies repeatedly implode when their elite choose to blindly protect their power rather than accept the truth. And to prove this isn't just theory, the text maps this exact pattern across successive generations in history, from Noah to Hud, Saleh, Lut, and Shuaib. By stacking these historical examples back to back, a powerful point is made. These aren't isolated bedtime stories. They establish a universal law. Reality mathematically responds to how a society engages with truth and justice. The repeating pattern itself is the message. Which brings us to Section 4, functional blindness and arrogance. We are right back to that devastating psychological diagnosis we mentioned at the start. Listen to this specific verse. They have hearts but do not comprehend. They have eyes but do not see. They have ears but do not hear. It perfectly encapsulates the tragic reality of having all your sensory faculties entirely intact, yet completely failing to perceive reality. The text goes so far as to say this reduces a person to a state worse than heedless cattle, because hey, at least cattle are functioning exactly as they were designed to. So what exactly causes this mental short circuit? One word, arrogance, or kibber. Arrogance literally creates a perceptual distortion. It's like putting on inverted glasses. If an arrogant person sees a completely clear sign of truth, they won't trust it. If they see the path of guidance, they'll just ignore it. But the path of error? Oh, they eagerly run down that one. Their capacity to perceive reality becomes entirely inverted. True awareness, on the other hand, is what allows you to recognize those signs, take the path of guidance, and maintain that elevated perception.
The explainer uses an incredibly visceral metaphor to drive this home. Imagine an individual is handed clear signs and guidance, but they willfully choose to detach from it. The Arabic root used here literally translates to shedding those signs like a skin. By purposefully slipping out of that guidance, they become entirely bound by their own base desires. The text brutally likens the state to a dog that pants constantly, whether you drive it away or leave it completely alone. It's saying that once conscious awareness is intentionally abandoned, you become an absolute slave to your basic impulses. So if we're so vulnerable to this, how is it fair? That brings us to Section 5, the Universal Human Covenant. Really, if we are this prone to functional blindness, how can any of us be held accountable? The text answers this with a profound primordial scene. Humanity is asked, "Am I not your sustainer?" And together they reply, "Yes, we testify." Now, this isn't framed as just some historical event in time. It's presented as an existential reality. Recognizing our sustainer and recognizing truth isn't just some learned behavior we pick up along the way. It is actually hardwired into human nature itself. This hardwired baseline is called the fitra, or innate nature. And because of this innate acknowledgement of reality, true heedlessness is totally exposed. At our absolute core, no one is truly ignorant. Therefore, avoiding the truth is an active, deliberate choice, an intentional turning away, rather than a genuine accident or just a lack of information. We are all fundamentally accountable because the baseline of truth is already installed inside us. Let's wrap all this up in our final theme, Section 6, the scales of reality. Everything in this journey builds up to the concept of al-mizan, the balance or the scales. It is the ultimate metric of success. But these scales don't just arbitrarily weigh good deeds against bad deeds like some cosmic point system. They weigh exactly how accurately one relates to reality, capital R. The weighing itself is the truth. So the crucial takeaway here is that it's absolutely not about measuring outward, performative rituals. It asks a much harder question. Did your life's actions actually carry the weight of reality, or just the lightness of delusion? Actions that align with truth build heavy scales, leading to success. Actions based on falsehood and ego, those lead to light scales. Doing injustice to the signs means you related to reality incorrectly, and the inevitable consequence of that is the literal loss of the self. As we synthesize this incredible map of human consciousness, let's just quickly lock in 4 key terms that anchor this entire philosophy. Al-A'raaf, that elevated vantage point of clear discernment. Al-Mala, the elite class that actively blocks truth to protect their status. Zina, the physical adornments of the world, which we're encouraged to use with balance but not treat as ultimate goals. And Sultan, meaning authority or proof, which is the text's demand for logical evidence over just blindly following the crowd. So, how do we actually cure this functional blindness day to day? The text provides a literal, programmed guide for engagement. It requires us to listen and be silent, to maintain an internal orientation by remembering your sustainer within yourself. You have to approach reality humbly and with awe, without loud, ego-driven performance. It requires continuous consciousness, morning and evening. But the most important rule of all, do not be of the heedless. As we wrap up this explainer on human history, ego, and perception, the text leaves us with one of those timeless, haunting challenges about how we choose to navigate our reality. Will you elevate your perspective and truly see? Or will you be among those who have eyes but are completely blind? Keep seeking that elevated perspective. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.